I now leave the floor to the third speaker, who is Vincenzina Caputo. Vincenzina is professor at the Department of Agriculture, Food and Resource Economics at the Michigan State University in the US. So Vincenzina should be quite early in the morning for you. Thanks if you are in the US, and thanks for being here. Vincenzina is a very relevant researcher focusing in consumer food choice and behavior analysis, in particular related with novel foods and new technologies. So Vincenzina, I'm very happy to have you here, and I leave you the floor.
So Davide, thank you for the nice introduction. For me, obviously, it's good morning, everyone. It's almost 6:30 a.m. in the morning here in the States. I'm located in Michigan, but I'm very happy to join this group. So my presentation will focus on consumer acceptance of food innovations, and I will obviously provide a little bit of a background. Why do we talk about food innovations? Create a little of context. And then I will focus mostly on two main food innovations and the rule of information, plant-based meat alternatives, and gene editing. And I will obviously provide some examples of studies we have done, both in the US, but also in Europe. I don't know if I'm able to go to the next. Okay. Okay, so obviously when we talk about food innovations, many of those discussions, both at academic and policy level, policymaker level, are about how we can create or build a sustainable food system. And so most of the time, food innovations come as one possible solution, but obviously we need to acknowledge that it's only one solution. It is not only one solution. Instead, in many different situations, there is a complex web of choices we have to make and trade-offs we have to make, both at the industry level, but also that policymakers need to consider. And so when we have different innovations on the table, obviously, when we talk about sustainable food systems, and one of those innovations, especially the one related to food innovations, is how we can shape what people eat and how we can shape dietary choices. And when we talk about shaping dietary choices, obviously the main goal, or the one that have been discussed at the global level, is how we can reduce meat consumption for reasons that are related both to health considerations, but also the environment. Now, what is the issue that we face when we try to shape consumption habits? The main issue is obviously that people love to eat meat, especially in specific countries, for example, the US. And so it's very difficult to shape behavior just because people don't want to change what they eat and they don't want to change their dietary choices. And so now the issue and the reason, I guess, why we are here today is, okay, now what we can do as academics, what we can do as policymakers, how the industry can help shaping the system and eventually offer different solutions that will not be so different than what consumers see and consumers experience every single day. Obviously, when it comes with policy decisions, education is one of the key aspects. And so on one end, we need to incentivize sustainable food choices. And there has been a lot of interventions in this direction. But at the same time, we also need to educate people and trying to understand how we can nudge to some extent and how we can incentivize their sustainable food choices. And so if we go to the next slide, now possible solutions within these big discussions are, please next slide, because I don't think I have, okay, sorry. Okay, so within these possible solutions, today, as I said, there are also within those shifts, within those dietary choices, different ways and different products that have been proposed. And you have discussed some of those, and I will now, in this presentation, I will focus on plant-based meat alternatives and, if time permits, on gene editing, on agriculture and food production. Next slide. Next. Okay, so plant-based meat alternatives obviously are products that are made with no animal content or very low animal content. And what is the innovation here, right? That unlike the first generation of plant-based meat alternatives, like for example tofu, they replicate the taste, the flavor, and the texture of conventional meat. And so this aspect is very important, because one of the reasons of the limited consumption of the first generation of plant-based meat alternatives, especially in Western societies, that people really don't want to give up with the taste of meat. And so through those new or novel products, right, we are offering to consumers, we are proposing to consumers a solution that will require a shift in their type of food they eat, but at the same time, they will not give up with their experience or sensory experience of eating conventional meat. At the beginning, there was a lot of discussion regarding whether a market of such type of a products could be an option, but indeed, it is an option, although it's not that big at this point. But if you look at the margin, right, we can observe increases that go like to 43% in the States since 2022. And then also in Europe, there is a, kind of the same trajectory at the margin, right? Where in 2002, there have been an increase in plant-based meat consumption of 19%. Now, obviously, when we offer solutions to consumers, there should be some sort of benefits, right? And so if we go to the next slides, one of the main benefits associated with plant-based meat alternatives is that the environmental impact in terms of agricultural land use, water usage, greenhouse emission, and energy use is substantially low. And so when you also go to the website of many companies producing these products, like for example, Impossible Burger, right? The way they promote those products is, when you eat Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger, basically what you are doing is you are making sustainable food choices, because compared to conventional meat, this is the amount of water we use, this is the amount of land we use compared to conventional food items. So from an environmental perspective, they want to capture the segment of consumers that are really concerned about environmental impact of the food they eat. And so now looking at the taste, right? So the taste is a little bit similar to whatever, of conventional meat, according, to a number of studies. But at the same time, there is also now this environmental aspect, which is very important. But there are also issues and concerns associated with plant-based meat alternatives that need to be considered. And so if we go to the next slide, one of the first issue associated with plant-based meat alternatives is, there are different types of environmental concerns. And so, for example, in California, right, the natural lands have been shifted to accommodate an increased production of almonds. And which means that we need to think in the future how those shifts can impact the ecosystems and water resources, especially in places where water availability it's an issue. At the same time, and I will go into this issue even during the discussion. When we talk about conventional meat, we just talk about, okay, there is the animal, and then I get those products from the animal, and that's it. But when we talk about plant-based meat alternatives, the situation becomes more complicated. And so, for example, to make a Impossible Burger, there are 21 different ingredients that are needed to produce those, right? To produce those products. And so now the question is, let's say, that we want to scale up, right? We want to acquire larger shares of the market. Is this sustainable? And what type of resources will be required to do so? So while, we are using less land, less water than what is typically used to produce conventional meat, at the same time, we are now converting or using other resources to produce plant-based meat alternatives. Next slide. In addition to that, there are also concerns related to the health profiles of those products. So the first time I saw the nutritional fact of the Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger, the first thing I've noticed, obviously, is the high number of ingredients present in those products. As I said, for Impossible Burger is like 21 different ingredients compared to only one ingredient for example, a normal burger. But then, if you also look at the nutritional profile, you will realize that in many situations, those products have a higher number of calories and almost twice sodium, right? Which obviously raises a number of health-related issues, especially in countries where obesity is one of the major public health concerns. And, partially because these environmental aspects and partially because these nutritional profiles, then the third issue, and we can go to the next one, is also in the next slide, it's also related to the low consumer acceptance, right? So the main targets, the main goal of this market is to also have meat eaters involved in the process and not only vegans or vegetarians, but especially among meat eaters, there is a very low consumer acceptance of plant-based meat alternatives. And this is in the US, but the same trend is also observed in Europe, for example. So in this, on the left, the figure in the left, right here, we asked in a survey a word association question. So what do you, could you please provide to us one word describing conventional meat or farm-raised meat and plant-based meat alternatives? So as you can see here, the majority of the consumers have associated positive words to conventional meat, but a share, I would say, more than 50% of people have associated also negative words to plant-based meat alternatives. And then we also did an additional study where we estimated the demand of conventional meat compared to different types of plant-based meat alternatives and blended burgers, meaning burgers made with meat and veggies together. And this we can see on the right, in the figure on the right of the slide. The market share of plant-based meat alternatives is lower than the market share, and so the demand of conventional meat, especially at lower price levels, right? Which now here highlights additional aspects, right? The first one, and is that in addition, to all of those issues, is that at higher prices, people would purchase, less of all of those products, but but still, there are not many differences between plant-based meat alternatives and conventional meat. But when you go to lower prices, when the prices will be low, then the difference can be kind of substantial between those alternatives. So price remains one of the main concerns for the acceptance of those new products in the market as well. So now, what can we do, or how can we shape those negative this negative perception among consumers? So in the next slide, I will talk about a study that I have done with colleagues from Wageningen University and Purdue, where we tested basically consumer preferences and demand for different types of burgers, including lab-grown burgers, plant-based burgers using pea protein, plant-based burgers using animal-like proteins, and then conventional meat. And in addition to just estimating the demand of those different items and the market share of those different items, we also wanted to explore how we can shape behaviors and how we can and whether providing consumers with information regarding those different options would change or would shift behaviors. And so at the time, it was 2019, I guess, when we started the study. So plant-based meat alternatives were like kind new even within the academic research. So we were thinking about different treatments to use, and one of those treatments was obviously whether the branding may affect what people choose when it comes with burgers. And in addition to the role of the private industry through the branding, we also wanted to explore whether providing information regarding the type of technology used or the type of products used to produce plant-based meat alternatives also would matter, and whether providing consumers with information regarding the environmental impact of those products compared to conventional meat would also matter. And so I will show you in the next slide what we did. And so, the first treatment obviously is just, you go, and it's what we name the control. You go into the market and you look at different products offered at different prices, and then you pick the one you would buy to cook your meal for that, to cook your meal. And so in this case, we just offer different types of burgers without any type of information. And this will give us like the best one, right? How much people are willing to pay if they will just see those products in the market, and they will go into the market with the type of knowledge they have that, in this case, we don't know. And so we are simulating actual market conditions. And then the second study, which we call branding, in addition to, providing to consumers the same type of experimental setup, meaning the same type of products, what we did was we labeled those products using the brands, right, that are available in food markets. And so since the study was done in the US, in this case, we used certified Angus beef, which has a very high market share, almost like 70% of market share in the market. And then we included, other types of brands: Impossible Burger, Beyond Burger, and Memphis, which is, another brand that eventually will produce lab-grown meat in this market. Then we also added 2 additional studies that I will explain in the next 2 slides. So the other treatment is what we call sustainability, and the last one is what we call technology. So in the sustainability treatment, what we did was we provided consumers with information regarding the sustainability aspects of those products, and we showed to them, what is the water, land, energy usage, and what is the level of greenhouse emissions of plant-based alternatives and lab-grown meat compared to conventional meat. And in the last treatment, which we call technology, what we did was we just explained how those different products were produced. I'm just reporting in this slide the information provided for plant-based meat alternatives, but we did the same for the lab-grown meat and the conventional meat. For the plant-based meat using pea protein, obviously, the main focus was just to say, this is basically, this alternative is basically produced with pea protein, so natural items, but with plant-based meat alternatives using animal-like proteins. We explained that these products are made with yeast that is genetically modified, and so we provide this additional insight to the consumer before they make those choices. So after providing consumers with this information, we asked the same questions where they could see the 4 different types of burgers and the non-option offered at different prices, and we asked them to make, their choices. Next slide. So what we found, right, is that in the first, in the picture, in the figure on the left, you will see the market shares and or the demand curves calculated using market shares at different price levels of plant-based meat alternative using yeast. And what you can see here is that obviously the highest level of demand for those products are when the information regarding the technology is given. And the main reason for this is because the use of gene editing technology to produce some of those products. When we look at the plant-based meat alternative using pea protein, right? Here, the highest demand curve, right? Is when we provide consumers with information regarding the environmental aspects related to the production of those products. And so there is a difference, right, in the way consumers to evaluate those products depending on the type of information we provided to them during the choice exercise. There is no effect on branding, so branding has no effect on the consumption of plant-based meat alternatives, and one of the reasons is basically because those brands back in 2019 were not that popular among consumers, so they were not driving their choices and their shifts in behaviors. When looking at those additional information treatments, there is one key message here, and this is that when we look at what type of information we want to provide to consumers, obviously we need to consider an holistic approach where it's not only one type of information, but this may change depending on how the product is produced, and in addition to what is the impact in terms of environmental aspects that we want to communicate to consumers in food markets. And so if you go to the next slide, here's some final remarks. So we started this study back in 2019, and all was about burgers, but nowadays in the market there are more than hundreds of different plant-based meat alternatives between first and second generation of those products, and they range from like beef, chicken, but also seafood options. And when we think about those alternatives as possible solutions to build sustainable food systems, we need to consider 2 key aspects. So the first one is that there are benefits associated with the production and consumption of those food innovations, but at the same time, we need to consider, especially if we look at how we can scale up, right, and how these products can scale up in the market, we need to consider a number of issues that are environmental issues and health concern issues, but also the low consumer acceptance, especially among meat eaters. And when we look at this final aspect, both as policymakers, industry, academics, we need to consider that not everybody will be on board with the transition, and we need to find or apply an holistic approach that will allow us to communicate different key messages to consumers depending on how these products are made and what is the final target in the market for those products. So I will not go into the other food innovation. So if there will be other opportunities, I will be happy to talk about gene editing as well. But I leave it here, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this this presentation. So thank you.